Hello and welcome. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan. I work here at Crow Canyon Software. Today we're going to be covering our contract renewal management application. Just sit tight with us. We're going to let some folks kind of filter in. We're going to give them a few more minutes before we hop into the demo. Yeah, sit tight. We'll get started here in about 60 seconds. While we are waiting though, let me just ping you or just give you guys a quick heads up. Today we are covering this contract renewal application, but kind of a plug for our next webinar on December 19th. James Restivo, who is on this call, answering some questions. So if you guys do have questions, feel free to pop those in as we go. But he's going to be running a NITRO workshop. NITRO Studio is our tool set that we use to admin our applications, run our out-of-the-box applications. We offer those as a standalone product as well, so you can kind of take and create. He's running a workshop on our workflows on December 19th. And I know this has been kind of a hot topic recently with like Power Automate, Microsoft Flow, whatever the heck they're calling it now. In their new pricing structure. It's a bit ridiculous in my opinion. It's kind of pricey per, going on the per user basis. So our workflow tool is fixed rate. We're not charging a per user for the flows. We're not charging a per workflow price. And it's got a lot of nice options there, including integrations with Flow or SharePoint Designer if you still want to go down that route. But it is going to be a nice little like 30-minute overview of the workflow tool, show you some of the capability, and then we could take a deeper dive on that if need be, if you're interested. And that is December the 19th. But I think shifting now towards the contracts piece, I gave us some time to get logged in, so I think we're gonna pop along here. Contract renewal management, contract management. So before I go too far into the demo, just kind of reiterate that first point. Our applications are out-of-the-box tools, are SharePoint tools. They live inside of your SharePoint environment, whether it's Office 365 or SharePoint on-premise, and that's 13, 16, 19, as well as online, like I said, classic and modern UI for both versions of SharePoint. So this is going to be in your environment, and it's going to live in a site of your choosing, leveraging what we call the NITRO Studio. So the forms you see, the workflows you see, the reports you see, the dashboards, that's all NITRO based, and that is included in the product. So I just want to make that differentiation clear that yes, NITRO comes included with the applications. If you want to use it as a standalone, kind of like a DIY, that is an option as well. It's a different pricing model. And again, we're going to be touching on the workflows December 19th with James. Okay, contract management. So in this case, we're really talking about contract renewal management, right? And the way that I see it is a lot of folks who are managing contracts, we typically see contracts being managed through an Excel spreadsheet, maybe emails passed around, maybe a physical paper copy, right? And a lot of the feedback that I get from my customers specifically around contract management is human error, in the sense of, what should we be doing in relation to these contracts? Not contract documentation, not the legal side of things, but hey, the contract's in place. Now, what do we have to do to make sure that this contract is managed appropriately and it's being handled, the milestones, the dates are being handled in the appropriate amount of time by the appropriate person? And that's really our goal here, is to focus on that side of the contract management piece. So as you can see here on this main page, we give you some dashboard, like kind of a red light, yellow light, green light dashboard of contracts expiring, overdue contracts, contracts expiring in 30 days, 60, 90, and then a list of all the contracts here beneath. So you can see like the title, the type of contract, the vendor you're working with, the value, contract status, expiration date, etc. Responsible entity. Now, those familiar with SharePoint, this is just a list view, and all of these views are configurable, right? The product comes a certain way out of the box, but since it's living within your SharePoint environment, you're going to have full access to come in and make any changes that you want. So if you want to see more information on this landing page, on this view, absolutely go right ahead. You have all the power to come in and configure this view. But let's talk about adding a new contract in, interacting with a form to add a contract into the system. Let's pull this guy up. And again, this is a NITRO form, right? This is Crocanian built designed. So if you want to capture more information on this form, it's like, hey, Ryan, this is a great start, but I need to capture these 5 columns. Well, contact us. We'll give you a little run through on NITRO forms separately. If we have time at the end of this demo, I will cover it in a little bit of detail, but just keep in the back of your mind that these forms are configurable, they're flexible, they can be manipulated to make it make sense for you. But we give you an idea of the type of information that you can capture here, right? The title of the contract, the type of contract. Let's just say, oh, new contract, right? Something really generic. And then also a little bit of like what we can do from a form flexibility standpoint. So let's say it's a lease agreement. Well, where a new column is going to pop up and say, okay, what type of lease is it, right? Now, maybe this is a support contract that rolls up to a master contract, right? And they're somehow connected. We want to build in that connection when we add this new contract into our list. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is a master service agreement. So when we toggle this button, that master contract goes away. Huge things, no, but it just shows you what you can do from a permissions, configurability of the forms perspective, right? Maybe some people can only see the certain columns and those triggers happen on certain conditions, right? It just gives you that, hey, I can have this when we're talking about building out these particular forms. Now, the responsible entity is big because this is the person that we're going to rely upon for our workflows. So the second part of this is, yeah, the forms are what we typically interact with, right? Most of when we work in SharePoint, we're working with forms, right? Interacting with the forms, manipulating data through forms. But the automation and the workflow behind this is really what's going to make sure that we're catching and updating these contracts appropriately. And a lot of those, in this case, a lot of those notifications, those workflows are going to be built around these dates here, right? And the SLAs, the service agreements associated with these dates. So like start date. Now let's say this is going to be a 1-year contract, right? So next, this is going to go out and be, what is it, 2020? Oh man, already. Okay, so this contract's going to expire December 5th, 2020. Now, since I'm the responsible entity, we can ping me as aggressively as we want in relation to this contract. Okay, Ryan, 90 days out, I need you to do A. 60 days out, I need you to do B. 30 days out, I need you to do C, right? And these are notifications done via email. And these emails are configurable. It's another piece of the NITRO Studio. It's a part of our workflow tool. I know, another plug on the workflows, but using the workflow tool, you can control what these notifications say and the content that you want to pass to this responsible entity for this particular contract. So it gives you a bit of flexibility in terms of what you can do from a notification standpoint, not only based on the timing, right? Like those timer-based workflows we were talking about, but also the content that you're passing to that responsible entity. So start or expiration date is going to be populated at the beginning. We can set up some notifications around that date column to make sure that we're being notified, things are being taken care of. But also if that date passes due, let's say it's December 6th, 2020, and I haven't done my job. I haven't come in and renewed the contract, updated something to make sure that, hey, this has moved along and it's now renewed for another year. We can also mark these contracts as overdue, and we can either notify the person again and say, hey, Ryan, you got to take care of this now, it's overdue, or escalate it to maybe a manager, maybe someone a step above to say, hey, this contract is standing idle and this needs to be done. It wasn't completed in the time frame that was allotted during the initial setup of the contract. So there's multiple things that we can do, multiple workflows, automated workflows that we can have based around that date column. And again, that's kind of eliminating that human error element. Okay, it's built in, it's a set and forget. We know that on this time cadence, this person's going to be notified, and then if it ticks overdue, that it's going to mark the priority as high, and the next person in the line is going to be notified. Now, in kind of a reoccurring theme in a lot of our applications, contracts is no exception, is that we try to tie different lists together. So on the left-hand side, on my left-hand nav here, you can see contracts is one list, vendors is another. And the goal here with our forms is to be able to, connect as many lists together as possible, so we don't have to jump around different screens, maybe write code to connect lists together. It's as seamless as possible, as seamless as we want to make it. And so you have the ability to add in a vendor to a particular contract as well. Now, the vendors, like I said, it's in its own list. And this list is tied back into that contracts list. And you can come in and add new vendors at your leisure, right? You know, as many vendors as you want. There's no limits or restrictions here. And it's just as simple as, hey, the company name, the contact information there, and then any related contracts to this vendor if they're added in after the fact. But you do have the ability to automatically look up to this vendors list from that main contracts page. Now, in this particular case, we have a tabulated form set up for our contracts form, but we can make it sections. Again, if you want to go into that in more detail, let us know. But just again, gives you an idea of what we have set up on this particular form. So payment terms, right? Those working with multiple offices across the entire world. You can plug in the currency type. You can put in the value and a PO number if need be. Contract documents, both internal and external, they can be saved in a SharePoint library and be automatically associated with this particular contract. And then this one here is milestones. So milestones, in my opinion, the best way to think about milestones is like tasks, right? Creating a parent-child relationship between a contract and a task. And typically what I see with other customers who leverage this tool is that when we send out these notifications around this expiration date, right, the 90, the 60, the 30 in our little example of earlier, we also want to create milestones. We want to create a task, a version history, a log of what has been done on this contract, right? So that not only are we notifying someone, new milestone. Not only are we notifying someone that, hold on, can't think and type, that something needs to be done on this contract, but we're also giving them a deliverable. We're saying, hey, you need to come in and complete this task, right? So we're pinging them to say, hey, this is what you need to have done, and then this is where it lives. And it can be assigned to anyone. I mean, this is a people picker. Like, this is a good chance to talk about how our hooks into SharePoint, right? So you can use SharePoint user profiles. We've seen some people sync up with Active Directory through SharePoint user profiles. So you can just, start typing in different names and have it populate this responsible entity. But we can look at using the workflow tool to auto-populate names, right? Based on that responsible entity column, anytime we create a task associated with this milestone, we're gonna add in James, we're gonna add in Ryan, and we're gonna hit save. And essentially what this is doing is it's creating a task in its own list, right, in its own little area. But now we're also relating it to this contract, right? So now when we look back at this contract, we can see that, hey, this was assigned to James 30 days or 90 days before contract delivery date, and he completed it on this day, and this were his notes. So now not only we know that we have the automation side of things where we're sending those notifications out on that time cadence, but now we have the other side of, hey, it's actually been done, and here is the proof to do, and here is the task to prove it. You could take it a step further. I worked with another customer that we have that has gone even as far to auto create the milestones when the contract is created. That is definitely possible. We use something like that in our onboarding tool. When a new SharePoint list item is created, we create these 5 tasks, these 10 tasks, right? So that's also an option as well that you could look at adding into this tool. It's up to you. That's the nice thing about SharePoint, is that we're extremely flexible with what we can do. And since you have the NITRO Studio as a piece of this, you don't have to contract with Crocanian to make changes. It's entirely up to you. Once you go through the training, we feel confident that you can come in and take ownership of this application. Notes, pretty straightforward, date and timestamps, who added the notes, when they added it, etc. So let's make sure I filled everything out appropriately here and there's nothing missing. Okay. So now once I hit save, it's going to create the item and then it's going to fire off the workflow process, right? Right here, basically what we're doing is we're using our custom actions. Again, another piece of NITRO Studio. I know a little bit of a broken record, but we really like our tool set here. And it's basically just saying, hey, everything's done correctly. We're generating a new contract ID and it's going to show in this main dashboard page. And that's really adding, adding the contract to that list. We try to keep it pretty straightforward. We try to keep it pretty intuitive, pretty simple, I guess is the best way to describe it. But let's talk a little bit about now another piece of this workflow. If something has to happen, right? If an approval has to happen, is that possible, right? That question comes up a lot. What happens if this needs to be approved before it can be added into the system? Well, using something called NITRO Studio, right? Here we are again. We have an app called Advanced Approvals, or with our workflow tool, you can also have an approval process. And what that does, very similarly to what we did with the task, it creates its own item in its own SharePoint list. Here we go, Advanced Approvals. So we've touched on a few of these: forms, workflows, Advanced Approvals. We'll get into a few others here in a second, but this is all included in this application. So what it does is it creates its own SharePoint list item in something that we call the approval task list. So let's say before this contract gets added in the system, it has to be approved by Pavan, or it has to be approved by me or by Scott before it gets added in. So what happens is that you get that email, and then you can go about it in one of two ways. You can come in and mark the task as completed and approve it, right? Just like I've done here, comments are approved. Or you can use something like we call lazy approvals, right? Where you can approve that via email. So you can easily interact, with the dashboard here and come in and mark off your tasks. See things equal to you by using that My feature. Or if you're comfortable creating or updating things via email, we can use some sort of common language, approved, denied, and just have that all available via email. So that's something that you can build in, or it's included in the application. You can build in as much of an approval process as you want. We recently did a webinar on advanced approvals. If you are interested in that piece, please let me know, reach out, and I'd be happy to share that video with you, or we can set up a time to talk in more depth about approvals. But basically, you can have a lineal approval system where one person in the group approves it, the form is created, or you can go through an approval step process. One has to approve it, two is created, two has to approve it, three is created, and so on. But that is definitely an option, again, when we're talking about this contracts renewal management application. Okay, so we talked about contracts, we talked about vendors, we talked about approval tasks. Now, just one last piece here before I take a little sidestep and we talk about the studio itself. So I want to touch on the dashboard. So another piece of the NITRO Studio here is our reporting tool. And as long as the information lives within the system, we can report on it. Now, what's cool about our reports is that they're live. So if anything changes in the system, the reports will update automatically. So you can see like contracts by department, typically on an X and Y axis, contracts by status, contracts by type, right? And a nice, easily digestible dashboard here. What's also cool about our reports is that they can be exported, PDF, PNG, emailed, printed, right, on a manual basis. So export that to PDF, show you what it looks like. There you go. You can also send these via email to certain people, management maybe, but they can also be scheduled. Again, leveraging our workflow tool, you can schedule these reports to go out at a certain date and time cadence of your choosing. Hey, on December 31st, I want to send all active contracts to this person at 9 a.m. January 6th, I want to see all contracts from the previous year that expired at 10 a.m. Right? So you also have that flexibility to have the reports live within the dashboard, but again, leverage that NITRO Studio workflow tool to send the reports to peoples of your choosing when you'd like, date and time cadence of your choosing. One other piece here that I just kind of plugged in because I wanted to touch on it is this list search feature. And this is something that we do outside of the norm of SharePoint. So I'm sure like those familiar have this search the site feature where you search something and it gives you everything within the entire site collection, right? It's not as easy as it can be. With our list search feature, it makes it pretty straightforward. Basically what you can do is you can search the different lists in the application. So all the lists in the site are available here. It gives you all the views available on that particular list. And then you can search some text. So let's say I'm looking for NITRO contracts. It's going to show me all the contracts with NITRO available in it, right? So instead of having to sift through different lists, sift through different views, it makes it easier from a find perspective. Like, okay, I know it's in this list. The all items view has everything. I want to see everything with Nitro in it. Well, maybe I want to see everything with Crow Canyon in it. There you go. Again, just kind of highlighting the differences between what we offer out of the box in NITRO Studio versus the SharePoint standard. Nice, clean, easy interface, and be able to find things as much as you want, or as easily as you want, I should say. And again, this is just a view, so any information that you want to have available, these are columns in our list, we can contract, contort, make this make sense for you guys. Well, that's really the contract renewal management piece in a nutshell. We have until the bottom of the hour, so this last like 4 minutes or so, I just want to touch on the forms piece because I do want to show you the configurability here, just give you a little taste of what we can do. Now, I can spend probably 3 hours on the forms alone. So if you do want to know more, please reach out, please contact us. We'd be happy to show it to you in more detail. But just really quickly, I mean, the idea behind our forms tool is to really make the forms available to all levels of SharePoint users, right? We talked to a lot of customers here, and a lot of the questions that pop up are like, okay, well, if I put this in place, is that department going to be able to manage and maintain this on their own? And that's the idea behind our forms tool. So in my opinion, I see it breaking down into 3 different levels: UI, UX, how the form looks and feels, right? Let's say we want a different color on the form, right? We want the tabs to be different colors. Well, I want the background color to match. I don't like that standard SharePoint white. So I can come in and I can change the tab color. Let's find something not obnoxious. There we go. I'd rather see a 2-column layout versus a 1-column layout. Okay, no problem. Right, so you have that ability to make changes to the way the form looks and feels. I want to see sections versus tabs. Right, I want a scrolling form as opposed to a tabbed form. So that there is that option, and you can see it's pretty simple to kind of click around. Now, when it comes to changing the form, adding columns, we've also tried to make that as WYSIWYG as possible. So here, under form controls, we give you all of the columns available in the SharePoint list here on this left-hand side. Now you can search them or scroll through them. Once you have them, you can drag and drop them in. Now this one already exists, so it's not going to let me do it, which is kind of a nice feature. But let's say I'm in the form designer and I don't have something I want to add is not created. Well, what's nice is that we've given you this create column feature to be able to create a column without having to leave the interface. So instead of bouncing back and forth between the list and the form designer, the idea is that everything's in one consumable location. You add the column in, it's created automatically, and it can be added to the form. Now there's a whole nother level here of permissions and not only on columns, but on tabs, as well as adding in script and submit action buttons down to calling out to external data columns, injecting custom JavaScript, sorry, a little tongue-tied there, as well as custom CSS. So as you can see, it can be very simple, very straightforward. Let's add in some colors. Let's add in, a new tab. Let's break things up with a line, right? Or it can go down to that developer level tool. So again, just kind of summing it up, UI, UX, first level in my opinion, second level of SharePoint standards, creating columns, adding permissions on columns, editing columns on the fly, and then the third is the developer side. And again, I can't stress this enough, all of this is included in the application. The reports, the workflows, the forms are all available there. Yes, it comes a certain way out of the box, like I've showed you today, but the option to add, configure, change is available once the application is installed in your environment. You can leverage us to come in and make changes for you, or you can take ownership through the training that we provide to take ownership of the application yourself. But the idea is that it gets up and running, and then anyone from a comfortable power user all the way up to development can come in and take ownership of the site. And we got about 5 minutes left here, guys. So if you have questions, now is the time. Feel free to shoot those over, or James, if anything came in, you want to shoot them out?
Yeah, we had a couple of good questions come through. We had a question about the ability to connect to existing databases such as Oracle Financials for the vendors to bring them into the system. Yeah, that capability should be there. We can talk about that, how we implement that, but that is possible to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have the external data columns feature here, and you can populate, SharePoint list forms from external databases. Absolutely. That's going to take some time to dive into. So if you're interested, reach out to us, sales@crowcanyon.com, and we'll set up a time to walk through that. But that is absolutely possible.
Then there's a question about, I guess an extension to that question. It was, could it be done one time? Is it a one-time thing, or could it be done continuously?
Yeah, I guess it's up to them, right, James? Like
Yeah.
it's either a one time, or I guess it's how often as they want it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It can be done. There are a few different ways that it can happen. We've done those types of database connections a lot throughout the history of our company, so we're very familiar with that,
Hmm.
how that
Yeah,
works.
it's not an uncommon request. Let's say that. Yeah.
All right. And then there's another question about the Nitro Forms Designer. Is it a SharePoint add-in? And my response was that was a part of NITRO Studio, which
Mhm.
itself is a SharePoint add-in.
Right. Yeah, it's these apps sit in the tenant app catalog, and then we license them for a site of your choosing. So in this case, it'd be the contract site, but like we touched on earlier, Nitro can be deployed to any site collection of your choosing within your farm or tenancy. It's priced a little separately, but if you're interested in either contracts or Nitro and the pricing structure a little bit more detailed, just let us know. I'd be happy to have that conversation with you privately.
That was it for the questions coming through.
Cool. We'll just we're going to shoot out the video, the recording after the demo here today. Just as kind of a precursor, we are running a discount on the contract renewal management piece before year's end. So if you're interested, again, don't hesitate to give us a shout. Be happy to talk it over with you. But if you have any questions, now's the time. If not, we'll give it about another minute or so here, and we'll let you guys go. So yeah, if we don't chat with you, happy holidays. Thanks for joining. I haven't seen any questions kind of trickle in. James, you have anything to add before we sign off?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I think that was great. Thank
Perfect.
you for doing that.
Yeah, and one more, guys, since James popped on, just one more plug. Nitro Workflow webinar, December 19th. If you haven't signed up, please do, and we'll look forward to talking to you then. Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.